Hi and welcome back to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. Thank you so much for continuing to hang out with me. I hope you're enjoying the tutorials. If there's anything you specifically would like me to do, please do let me know. I'm always trying to come up with new and interesting things that we can do with wire and tools. So lots and lots of you have asked about the Chaos Crown. And today I would like to show you all of the techniques that you will need to make one of these. Now they are a little bit time consuming, but you can probably make one of these in about 3 hours if you put your mind to it. It's also one of those projects that you can totally pick up and put down. One of the things I love about the Chaos Crown is if you want it to be a bit funkier, you absolutely can. You bend every second one down, looks more floral, looks a bit almost gestury now. So we're going to go through all of the techniques that you will need to create this. You can also size this technique down. I'm just going to show you the mini version. Now you can pop this onto a headband and then you've got your own little mini crown, which is actually pretty cute for flower girls who may not want to walk around with a big old crown on their head. You can take something like that. Just slide through a very, very normal metal headband and then you can stick it on a jaunty angle, much as you would do with a fascinator. I'm going to pop these out of the way and then we're going to talk about the tools and wire supplies that you need for this piece. So if you're going to make the full size crown, I would thoroughly recommend a 1.5mm gauge wire for the base. I've got a length of antique bronze. It's probably about 2 foot in length altogether. I've also got some 1mm gauge to make the points, and I've got some 0.6mm gauge to do the infill. Now you can do the infill in a 0.5, 0.6 or 0.8. If you've got very strong fingers you could try it in a heavier gauge, which will obviously result in a much heavier but also more durable crown to wear and to keep and kind of to reuse. If you make it in very, very light gauge wire, then the chances are that you'll wear it once and it probably won't get out again. So the first thing that you would need to do is work out how large the circuit of wire you will need is to sit on your head. Now, I know that this 2 foot or so of wire is going to be more than I need. I don't have my tape measure with me, but what you need to do is measure relatively low to begin with. You can always snip a little bit off and nip it in. So what I'm going to do, if you come down to the board with me, is I'm going to show you the very simple technique, and this is a technique I use for many of my circlets and crown designs, just to create a ring of quite stable wire to start off your crown. So at one end of the wire, I'm just going to take my flush cutters to that and make it a super neat ending. Let's get that little bit away. And then maybe about 5mm from the end, I'm going to pop a little bend on there, possibly a little bit more than that because it's quite heavy gauge wire. And I'm just going to turn that over so that I've got the tiniest loop I can manage. Now if that goes wrong, then it's not a problem. You can snip that off and start again. That's always why I start with more wire than I need. One of these loops is going to need to be on the flat plane. When I make the loop on the other end, it will need to be on the vertical plane, so that they will need to be 90 degrees to one another so that they can interlock. So I've mashed that slightly, so I'm just going to get that straight and make sure I'm happy with it. As I say, I do start with more wire than I need, because if I do make any errors, it just gives me a little margin that I can then work with. So I'm just going to smooth that around with the curvature of my thumb and the heat of my body, just to get that to sit how I want it to. And I'm going to start sizing things up. So I reckon I'd need about this much wire from the end to where my thumbnail sits to make the loop. So I'm just going to hold that in position, and I'm going to bring that up now to my head and see how much too big it is, so I know how much to cut off. Well, that is a little bit larger than we need. So I'm going to take off some of the wire. I'm just going to bring that back down to the board now. And I'm just going to see what it looks like if I push it 1.5 inches or so past the first loop we've made, grip that firmly and bring it back up. So that's still a little bit large, so I'm definitely going to cut away here. Get rid of the excess safely in my scrap pot. And then we're going to see what we are left with and make sure that's going to sit comfortably but also low enough down. If you're making a crown and it sits too high on the head and you are planning to wear it without any securing, obviously you can take hair grips or you can wire your crown onto a band, a headband if you desire, but if you want it to sit comfortably you do need it to be sitting this kind of level. I mean, obviously all hairlines differ and forehead shapes differ as well, but for me that's where I want the base to begin so that I can build up from there. So I know I've got a little bit too much wire again, so we're just going to take this back up again until I am comfortable with how that's going to sit. So I'm going to make an estimation that that's approximately where I'll need to be. So as I say, our first loop is in the horizontal plane, so the next loop will need to be in the vertical plane, and what I'm going to do is bring in my round nose pliers. Sorry if this goes out of focus slightly from being closer to you. I'm going to create that loop, draw it over the end, and then I'm going to trim away. I've made this loop slightly bigger because we will need to open this out successfully to link the two together. Whoops, sorry about the noise. So I now know that that's going to fit in, and if my loop is too small on the far end I can soon edit that out a little bit anyway. So I'm just going to now check this for size. So that looks pretty reasonable to me, but again, if you have made any errors, then you can just snip a little bit off the end and that's still going to be a workable piece. So I'm just going to open that one out slightly, like so, draw that around and pop those two loops together and just see if this is going to sit. That's just linked them together very, very loosely. I've not closed this up and there's a reason for that. At this moment, I'm just trying to get the size right. So I'm just going to scooch that open slightly. Edit the shape so it sits on my head, so we're going to bring that up and give it a try. So that looks pretty good. By the time it's got some weight on it, it's going to push it down slightly. You do need to be at pains to make sure that this is right for you at this stage, because the amount of work that we're going to do now would mean it would be a little bit sad if this didn't go to plan. You can always take a half centimetre or a centimetre away and make it slightly smaller. If you take too much wire away, then you're going to end up with a crown that sits very high. You can still use it, just put it onto a tiara band instead. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is to make the points, and I've lost the bits of wire that I had, so I'm just going to cut some fresh ones. Here we go. So this is the 1mm gauge wire, which is going to make my points. I'm just going to cut a couple of these very, very quickly, and I'll give you some tips on how this works best. Let's get the wire back out of the way. So I've got two lengths of wire that are the same size, and what I'm going to do is make a master segment to work with. So if I just pop the base of the crown out of the way, just over to one side for a second, I'm warming the wires through to begin with. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a smooth. I'm going to keep one of these, and I would cut several sections all the same length based off that segment just here. This is going to become my master. So what I want to do is find the centre point. Now I'm going to open this out against the curvature of the wire because I think that looks quite attractive. Also enables you to get quite a nice point on the top there. I'm just going to bring those two legs down, and then we're going to, about 1.5 inches from the bottom, turn these wires at 90 degrees. Now they do need to be really quite even. So what I need to do is just take a second to get this nice and straight, so that we can measure that those two legs are going to be the same size. Now what I did on my original Chaos crown is close this section up at the top and then reopen it, because it gives a really nice sharp point. But for the time being we want these to run side by side, like so, to make sure that our two bends are in the same space, they're the same length. So that's one side. Try not to mark your wire as I have just done. And then another bend on the other side, making sure that they are the same. So at this stage what I would be doing is, I think there are 9, on my Chaos crown there are 9 segments that all interlock and create the crown as it goes around the head. So what I would do at this stage is cut another 9 or 10, just to have one to be sure, sections of wire that are all the same length as our master wire, and then I would sit and make loads of these little funny shapes. and make sure that they all line up to be exactly the same. So the bend is in the centre and you've got these two sections here to work with. Now at this stage, as long as you've got a good inch to 1.5 inches of wire, that will be fine. They don't need to be the same size just here because we're going to trim them after we've wired it onto the base of the crown, so don't worry too much. So I'm just going to make 2 for the state of this demonstration, just so that we don't spend too much time. So here we go, we're going to find the centre again, bearing in mind I've already used this to create my 9 or 10 cut lengths of the same dimension. I'm going to bring that down. Let's have a look. It's not exactly central, but we'll manage. Closing the top point up a little bit. You need to put a little bit of pressure to stop it from twisting, but if it does twist, it's not the end of the world. You can untwist that. Smoothing the wires whilst holding on to the end. We'll get that straight enough for you to measure up. And we now need to have another 2 legs created just here. So I'm going to go in for the first one, like so. Put that sharp bend on. And then I can use that to create the second bend, like so. I'm just going to hold on to it with the pliers there, and then I can take a second to sharpen that up. You don't want to spend too much time wiggling the wire at this section because we need it to have a little bit of flexibility just yet. So let's move on and say that let's go for 10 of these segments ready, and we're always going to keep one as our master segment anyway, right up until we finish the last section of the crown. So what I'm going to do is unlock the piece where we put it all together, and it just makes life slightly easier to work with if this is open. Now I'm going to begin by opening out one of my leggy points that I've created. I don't know what you want to call them what you will, and just get that to sit how I want it to. You can make this in a slightly heavier gauge wire if you want, but it will impact the weight of the piece when it's on your head. I've made it with 1mm gauge, which means it's really, really easy to wear. Quite happy with the shape that I've created. I think I want this to be straight, but you could have that curving out slightly if you wanted to. And we're going to add this onto the outside of our crown circle base. Now, just for the sake of ease, I'm going to start at the front. So I would put my loop that generates the complete circle closure at the back, and I'd put the point at the front. I'm just going to start by supporting both of those sections that we turned away at 90 odd degrees. I'm just going to push them up so that that starts to wrap around the frame, and you can see it's quite floppy at the moment. It just wants to go over, which is absolutely fine. So what I need to do now is support the upright of the triangle, if you like, and then bring this tail around. Now you can go quite crazy here if you want to. You can make lots and lots of loops, but for the sake of speed, I'm going to make this 2 loops. I'm just going to bring that so it's upright on the rear view, and I'm going to trim away like so, and then I'm going to fold that last little bit of wire over so it sits away from the hair, and just rotate ever so slightly without allowing this to come forwards. Whoops-a-daisy, one of my earring stands decided to get in the mix. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So what can happen at this juncture is as you draw the cut tail around the crown frame, you can shorten the upright section, or the inverted or the triangular pyramid section. So we want to take great pains to put pressure on that just here so that we keep the same size on both sides. So gripping that quite firmly, taking the tail all the way around. If you want to put 3 loops on, put 3 loops on. If you want to put 10 loops on, put 10 loops on. You'll need longer bits of wire. Give that a bit of a squeeze, trim away the excess, like so. And then gripping again very, very firmly, we're just going to turn that section of wire so that it comes all the way around the frame and away from the hairline, so it shouldn't be uncomfortable or snaggy in use. So that is the beginning of our chaos crown. And what I'm going to do now is show you how to put the next section on, but I'm not going to wire it on completely because I need to show you both sides. So in order, if you were to put all of your pieces on like so, there's a potential that they can come apart and leave gaps. So what I've done with my chaos crown design, let me just move these earrings out of the way, that's better, is I interlinked the pieces. So on the right hand side of my first upright, I popped the new or the next section to go, and then I wrapped it around the frame on this side. So it crosses over the front and then it wraps to the left of the base of our first section. When I got to the far end, what I needed to do was snuggle it in underneath. So if you do this side first, it just sits in like so, and then you get a very symmetrical appeal. It's not symmetrical, but it works all the way around. So on the left hand side of the mountain, the wire is over the top, but on the right hand side of the mountain it's underneath. I mean, you will see if I bring the piece into play. So on here we've got the frame coming over the top on the left and underneath on the right, and so they interlink as you move all the way around. Might be easier to see on the base, actually slightly more in focus. I will show you that to the face front camera as well, just so that you can see what I mean. So where each triangle has been added onto the frame, coming down this side, over the front, and on this side underneath. And as long as you sit it in first before you start wiring it on, you can get it on both sides. It's really easy to do that. So I'm going to now move my second piece out of the way because I've shown you how to interlink them. And what I want to do is show you how to add the chaos detail. Now this can be beautifully enhanced later on with random gemstones or seed beads if you want to. You can just layer them using the exact same technique I'm about to show you. So I can't find my 0.6mm gauge bronze wire, so I've got a length here of some rose gold colour, which I'm just going to cut. Give that a smooth. Now this is a good 2 foot of wire again. I'm going to give that a little bit of a smooth. It's got a bit of a kink in it. Not too much working, but just enough. So back down to the board, and I'm just going to start by putting a little circle in like so. Doesn't need to be neat, that's the whole joy of it. I'm going to lay that over the front of my peak that I've created for the first crown segment. Hold that very, very firmly and wrap around once and then twice, and then draw it down underneath. So I'm going to just scooch that up so it's nice and neat and tidy. If I flip this over, I can show you that on the other side as well. It doesn't really matter where it starts and where it ends. That is the joy of a chaos design. So we've taken it over the front of the upright of the triangle, all the way around until back underneath. That's actually gone quite neatly, but you could tidy that up if you wanted to. And then I'm just going to draw one side of the wire out of the way whilst I just do random loops. So I'm working underneath on this pass, a random loop. You could do 2 if you wanted to, because it will build up and layer up in strength. Take the tail all the way around until you get another loop. And you can mess around, you can do straight bits and bits with no loops, bits with 2 loops, bits with large loops, small loops, etc. All the way around the frame twice, back over the front. Now, what I did to anchor the piece together is to add some sections that interact with the main frame of the design. So I quite fancy having a loop there. I'm going to bring a loop down, draw that around the bottom, like so, once and twice. We're back underneath. Another loop here, and it builds up really quite quickly at this stage. Once around the frame, twice around the frame, scooch those together. I might have a bit without any loops in it at all. Take that tail around. You can work with great big long swathes of wire if you like, or you can work with any number of smaller lengths. It's whatever is comfortable for you and whatever makes you feel happy doing the design. So you can, if you wanted to, post the loops through the holes, or you can just build them up in layers like so. So I'm going to take this all the way over underneath the back here. Keep twisting the piece to make your life as easy as possible. Once around the frame, twice around the frame. I mean, you can play around with the number of times you're looping if you like. Another little loop here, and then over to the far side. So this will probably be my last segment with this section of wire. So just going to use my pliers now to take the tail all the way around, and because I'm coming to an end and I want this to be secure, I'm going to go for a third wrap and just give that a squeeze. Now normally we would be at pains to hide our cuts on the back of the design. If you have a boofy hairdo, you might not particularly want to have the cut bits on the back. That could cause you some issues. Wherever you're going to put the end of the wire, just make sure that it's as smooth as possible. What you can continue to do, you've started in the middle because it means that you're working with less wire as you go around. I'm just going to grab the crown back and plop it on my head. So you can see how they interlink. You can see how each of them are made up. I'm not quite sure what I've done. Oh, here it is. Hang tight. Whoops-a-daisy. Here we go. So this is my chaos bangle, which is a very much heavier variation of the work we've done today. But you could absolutely apply that technique once you've built up your basic framework, add some more beads or gemstones or whatever you fancy to the crown. It is really quite effective as a mini as well. You will need to attach that to your head somehow, though it won't just sit there, it probably will plop off at some point. That's the Chaos Crown. I hope it's helpful to you. I hope you enjoy it. Many, many thanks for continuing to watch. I hope to see you again really, really soon. Don't forget to keep an eye on my Facebook page for Monday Lives, and please do hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the demonstration. All the very best, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.